What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Happy May the 24th. I remember the date, Reed Wallach, because my son Micah is 3 years old today. So
Happy birthday.
happy day. Thank you. And I'm happy to be here with you on the Daily Betslip. Got a fun show for today. We will, of course, go over the bad beat of the night. We'll dive into our best bets of the night. Reed is slowly continuing to let the magic of baseball take over his betting card on a daily basis, which is very exciting for me. So that will continue on today. Also, plenty of NBA coverage, which you can find a little bit later on for the game of the night between the Dallas Mavericks and Golden State Warriors. Mavs, despite being down 3-0 in the series, Reed, -1 over at WinBet Sportsbook tonight with a total of 215.5. We will dive into that matchup in just a little bit, and I know that you have plenty of props for that game as well. And coming up as well in about 20 minutes, did you know that it is 100 days away from the start of college football season?
As someone who is a big college football bettor, yes, I definitely had my eye on the calendar. But no, that's my bread and butter. So even the last week or so, I've been kind of gearing up for college football. So I'm pumped about it.
I'm a little bit surprised. I figured if you had it on the calendar, it was like right up your alley. And yet I had to be the one to remind you that college football is still 100 days away. Like, do you have it circled at any point as to like the 100 mark, like the 100, the 50, the 20? By the way, I read, it turns out that he just froze up a little bit. So we'll get him right back shortly. Yes, 100 days away from the start.
I'm still here though. Football.
But as far as it goes, and do we have you, Reed? Even though we can't see you, at least at the moment, it looks like there is a big orange blaze coming out.
Can
like
you hear me?
Hiding away.
Let me see.
All right. We'll get to Reed coming up in just a little bit as far as it goes. But we'll go ahead and kick things off. By the way, great opportunity for anybody that's watching. We are live, of course, on Twitter at BetSided. You can also find us on YouTube as well. All you have to do is head on over to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and just search BetSided. You can't miss it. And once you're there, you'll notice that we are live at this point, really being able to go ahead. And it's a good opportunity as well on YouTube to be able to interact with the show as well. Get a great opportunity to get some questions answered over the course of the broadcast as well. And once we get Reed's connection reestablished, we'll go ahead and bring him in for that as well. So plenty to dive into. I kind of want to start off with the bad beat. I know that this was something that Reed had brought up, but I'll go ahead and bring it up for you as we work to get him back on the show. Oh, boy. The St. Louis Cardinals and Toronto Blue Jays. Boy, if you this has been a bad month for unders in Major League Baseball. Got off to a great start. Unders were hitting at the start of May at a 60% clip. And it has gone right down to the toilet. It's been a lot of overs. And this is still without seeing a whole lot of home runs. We're still seeing a home run rate at its lowest point since the 1980s here in the year 2022. And this is with all the efforts for Major League Baseball to try and make the game a little bit more exciting, put the ball in play. But the weird humidor effect that's starting to take shape, not exactly working out when it comes to that regard. But regardless, if you had the under in the Cardinals and Blue Jays game, did not work out for you. Here we are, extra innings, bottom of the 10th inning, bases loaded. And at this point, you just need a base hit. Base hit wins the game. You know, all Paul Goldschmidt has to do is just drive in one single solitary run, and you know that it's going to be over. You don't want to have to deal on with the 11th inning, anything post after that. More and more of those runners and opportunities to score, have a team have to try and tie the game up. But no, Paul Goldschmidt had to ruin the under bet for anybody that was involved and go ahead and take I think it was a grand slam to go ahead and close things off. Sure enough, it was. He homers, wins the game. It's the 5th home run in the last 15 days for Paul Goldschmidt. And I'll mention him just a little bit. Just wrote an article about him over at BetSided that he's the stretch that he's on right now from a historical perspective. Like, you cannot do more than what Paul Goldschmidt is doing right now. I'll give you the specific stat as I load it up. It's from Stats by Stats from Stats Inc. And they do a great job over on Twitter as well, putting all of this together. So Paul Goldschmidt, over his last 15 games. He's in the midst of a 15-game hitting streak. And I talked about this in the article. The concept of like just having a 15-game hitting streak is usually enough merit on its own. It's already very difficult to do. This is what Paul Goldschmidt is doing. Over the last 15 games, he has 28 hits, he's 12 doubles, 5 home runs, and 22 RBI. Since RBI became an official stat in 1920, no other major league player has reached all of those numbers over any 15-game span. And that's remarkable company to think about, right? Think about all the different players that have played, especially like in the steroid era. Like we think about like the OPS numbers for guys like Barry Bonds and McGuire in the 1990s. It doesn't even come to that. Like Paul Goldschmidt in an era where we're seeing less and less power and less balls in play is putting up historic numbers. And I wrote at BetSided today about how he is actually in very good company right now to be considered for the National League MVP, but his odds do not reflect that. He's currently listed at 20-1. His teammate Nolan Arenado currently at plus 750. He's second on the list behind Manny Machado, who's the favorite over in the clubhouse right now. I can't figure out at this point why Goldschmidt, based off of not just the 15 games, but the entire season right now, the numbers have been absolutely spectacular. So definitely something to consider. Paul Goldschmidt not only crushing the souls and dreams of underbettors in that game, but also if you want to go ahead and try and take advantage of his MVP numbers right now towards the tail end of May, I definitely think it's worth some consideration. I know that we're still looking for Reed to get back. He was frozen in time, but we will get him back here on the program hopefully soon. But let's dive into some bets of the night. So Reed obviously has another one in Major League Baseball, which I teased a little bit earlier. We'll get to his as soon as he is back on the show for today. But I do want to start things off with a play for Dylan Cease. If anyone's been watching Dylan Cease this year in the major leagues, you know that this guy's been incredible. Absolutely incredible for the Chicago White Sox. In fact, I heard an interview that his teammate Joe Kelly did over on 670 The Score in Chicago. Shout out to my guys, Danny Parkins and Matt Spiegel on their afternoon show there. And Joe Kelly basically said that Dylan Cease is the best stuff on the team. And the numbers reflect that. Dylan Cease has been flat out incredible. So giving a look at his strikeout number today against the Boston Red Sox, it's set at 7.5. And maybe at first glance, you're thinking like, okay, that's a decent high number. I am going under, and I'm getting that at plus value of plus 105. So just a perspective on how dominant Dylan Cease has been. In 7 starts this year, he's hit the over on the strikeout prop in 6 of them. What's also crazier is that over his last 2 starts, he's recorded 20 strikeouts over just 9 2/3 innings. He played the Red Sox 3 games ago. He struck out, I believe, 8 Red Sox in 5 innings. This was back on May the 7th. But the reason that I'm going under is he's not going deep into games. He can, but you're also facing a Red Sox lineup right now that's absolutely crushing the baseball. They've averaged over 7 runs per game since May the 18th. And if Cease is only going 5 1/3 innings, if he's not going through that Red Sox lineup a 3rd time, that's a concern for me, especially against a hot lineup that's already going to make you work for pitches. I know that the Red Sox will still have opportunities where they'll still strike out in bunches. And again, Cease is not going to have like 2 or 3 strikeouts. It's probably going to be close to that number, but it's 7.5 against a hot team. I just don't like that opportunity for him. And I like the fact that I can get it at plus value. And once you get to that 7, 8, 9 range, love taking a lot of those unders in that particular situation. So I'm going under Dylan Cease 7.5 strikeouts at plus 105 over at WinBet tonight. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to bring in our guy, Reed Wallach, once again. I think the gambling gods just got too excited with you for the start of college football 100 days away, but we are in the midst of best bets right now. I gave one of my favorite MLB plays. I know that you have another one on the board as well.
Yeah, I think I couldn't hear you give out another under and stomach it, another strikeout under. So I think the computer knew and was like, all right, we're going to bring you out for this one. We're going to have your computer shut down and everything, and we'll get on the other one. So
it's understandable. I get it.
Yeah. But so, Ben, I got to 3-0 when I was with you earlier last week, and then I went with Donovan and I lost. So now I'm 3-1, still over 500. But So I am going to go, though, with, I think last week we did a similar game, Angels Rangers. I went with, I think, the Angels team total over. Now this one I'm going to go Angels Rangers over 8.5. This is Noah Syndergaard versus Dane Dunning. And at first I wanted to fade Noah Syndergaard. He got knocked around by the Rangers last time out. He didn't even get out of the first inning. And the Rangers are an underdog again, but I can't trust Dane Dunning on the road. He has terrible road splits in his 3-year career. Let me just pull him up real quick. On the road away from Arlington, he has an ERA of north of 5 in very limited sample size. I just can't get there with him. This Angels offense still rakes with Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani. Both bullpens are bad. I think this game is going to break out a little bit. We saw last week teams are going double digits against one another. They have familiarity. So I like over 8. Oh, I have over 8, minus 115. Sorry, I know there are 8.5s out there. I still like that. So give me over 8 as my best bet, Angels Rangers, my baseball bet of the day.
So you said that you were 3-0 up into the point that you and Donovan hosted the show, and then that was the one that dropped.
Yeah, so I need you back. So this works. No less strikeout unders and more with me and you taking my baseball bets.
I don't like betting strikeout unders, but sometimes it just sets it up to be an ideal situation to jump on it. It's not that I wish for strikeout unders.
This was a debate I was having with my buddies the other weekend. Do you like betting on unders or overs more? As I bet on an over.
Do I like it more? Like, are you talking?
I would rather bet on one than the other if I had to choose.
I would always rather bet on the over, and I think.
Oh no, I would rather bet. I like betting unders more. I think there's. Really? I like rooting for like a struggle. Like I like rooting for things not to happen rather than for them to happen. Like I like even though I just took like this baseball over, I would rather root like especially like a basketball under. Nothing better than like a team that just can't make a shot. Like
that's why you like college basketball so much, because you get to root for just pitiful offenses.
Yes, there's nothing more entertaining.
That's gross. Like it's a market inefficiency. It's why most sharps tend to bet unders, because they know the public love overs. But I side with the public here. Do I
flatter that you group me in with the sharps, the guy who was banking on the Mavericks to beat the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals.
Listen, as somebody who did a video with the whole team at the start of the NBA postseason saying, maybe we should consider the Dallas Mavericks 20-1. And like, you have some skin in the game. You have the Mavericks as a futures ticket this year. So I'm not going to poo-poo that. Like there's reason.
It's going to be used with my poo-poo soon.
That's fair enough. Let me give you another fun under bet that you can root for tonight.
Let's hear it.
And I stole this from our guy Joe Summers, because I love the way that he set it up, and you can read it in his best MLB parlay picks today. So we got the Marlins and the Rays. Nice pitching matchup on the board between Pablo Lopez, who's been outstanding this year, and same with Shane McClanahan for Tampa Bay. So he's going under at 6.5 at minus 115, and I agree with it. He mentions that Lopez has allowed 1 run in 19 road innings this year. Got a Rays team that's actually striking out a little bit more often than anticipated. Normally the Rays a little bit more patient at the plate, but they're top 12 right now in baseball in strikeout percentage. And you also have the Marlins ranked 28th in baseball in OPS against left-handed pitchers in the month of May. And McClanahan's been outstanding over the last 2 starts. 1 run in just 14th inning. Joe also mentions that he's 92nd percentile in expected ERA and 97th in strikeout percentage. So you have 2 offenses right now that really can't hit the other pitcher. Lopez is set up for success on the road. McClanahan is dominant over his last several starts. Just doesn't feel like there's going to be a whole lot of runs scored in this game. Maybe something comes out late, but I think you can escape the 5th or the 6th inning when both these guys are out, and we're looking at maybe a 2-0, 1-1 type of game, and just hope that it stays in the under category and you don't get another 4 or 5 runs the rest of the way.
Yeah, this is a beauty. This is pretty. A 6.5 total. But no, I agree. I mean, yes. Listen, I see the logic. I mean, Lopez in the mix, both McClanahan and Lopez, like you said, they're in the mix for Cy Young. So I mean, pitchers duel for sure. But 6.5. Anytime you see those, you're just like, oh God, like here we go. 6.5. I mean, you have like no margin for error there.
No, not one bit. Before we get to your W for your NBA picks, let me go ahead and drop another one, because you've been slowly gauging all of our great listeners with the MLB picks. But I have been diving into the world of the WNBA, and I've really started to enjoy betting on the WNBA. It's been a lot of fun. Have two plays up that I did a collab bet today, once again, with our guy Donovan Smoot. We have 4 WNBA plays that you can find over at WinBet Sport, or over at WinBet, and also at BetSided. But one play in particular, there's sometimes, Reed, we look at the numbers. You and I are both fairly analytical guys. And you see a matchup like the Dallas Wings and the Connecticut Sun that would indicate that, okay, Dallas 8.5 point underdog on the road at Connecticut. And Connecticut's a really good team. Like, listen to these numbers, and it should indicate that this is a team that is deserving of being an 8.5 point favorite. Okay. So Connecticut is first in I just lost the number here. The Connecticut is first in the WNBA in net points per game. They're first in opponent points per game. They're first in opponent points per 100 possessions, and then they're second in points per 100 possessions. Sounds like a really high quality team, right? Like, you look at that and say, yeah, right. Them and the Aces, they're 1-2 in the power rankings. Here's the problem. They're bum slayers. They haven't beaten anybody. They haven't beaten anybody that's good this year. They're 4-1, but their wins have come against a 2-win Indiana Fever team that's in the midst of a full-on rebuild. They've gotten 1 win against the LA Sparks team that's lost 4 in a row. Yeah. And they've split their season series against the New York Liberty, who might be the worst team in the NBA. My other WNBA bet of the night is Minnesota -5 at home against the Liberty. And the Liberty's already beaten them. So you've already lost a game to a terrible team. You've gotten 1 against them. You haven't beaten anybody else. Dallas has played quality opponents. They have a big win against Washington this year. That's another top team in the WNBA. The fact that they're getting 8.5 on the road against the Connecticut team that really hasn't done anything that impressive. It's one of those situations where I think the numbers actually do lie. Yes, they're right at the top in a lot of these different categories, but it's largely a reflection of them not playing anybody. So I love Dallas at +8.5 here.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking like betting unders instead of overs. I like this. Like, plug your nose, take the dog. A lot of points. I'm all for it. Great handicap. And I think you're more in tune with the WNBA, but you're catching a Suns team that's beating up on nobody, like you said. That maybe the market's kind of overreacting to their 4-1. And I know they made the WNBA finals last year, right? They're coming off the finals, or they made the conference finals.
I think they made the conference finals. I know the
but this is a team held in high regard. This isn't like a team coming out of nowhere. So they're already like held to a high regard. So I like getting Dallas this many points also. I mean, you're going to have to blow them out. So, I see.
The Mercury was the one who lost to the Sky in the finals last year.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, the Sun, they were one of the top 3 choices preseason. I remember I did a preseason pod with Donovan on the WNBA. So I like kind of fading Connecticut here.
Awesome. All right. So you got 2 in the 2 in the NBA, I should say, to wrap up best bets before we get our beak wet with a little college football action.
Yeah, 2 props for me on this Warriors-Mavericks game. We'll start with the Warriors. I think Dallas's only path to victory, like if there's one thing that Jason Kidd's going to write on the whiteboard and say, is it's going to be, let's slow down Steph Curry. And they really haven't been able to. Game 1, he only had 21, but he didn't play as much. In games 2 and 3, he had 32 and 31. But in game 3, he also had 11 assists, and I think that's going to be the point of attack for the Warriors. I think they're going to spread the ball around. I think the Mavericks are going to say, we're going to try and slow you down. We're going to force the ball out of your hands. It's going to have to be a Klay Thompson game. It's going to have to be an Andrew Wiggins game. So Curry's player prop is only at 5.5 assists. I know it's juiced the over, but he's averaging close to 6 assists this entire postseason already. I don't think this is going to be like a Curry 50-point night. I think it's going to have to be by committee. I don't think Dallas is necessarily going to roll over. We'll see if they could win, but I like Curry over 5.5 assists. I think that he's able to get this. Again, he's averaging close to 6 this entire postseason, so I still think there's room to go on this one.
So do you kind of correlate Curry's assist numbers with games that you feel like he's just not going to be able to take over offensively? Like, where teams basically force him to be the distributor that he can be, but doesn't always like to be.
Yeah, so I was looking for different ways to attack the Warriors, not necessarily Steph points. And I was thinking, all right, like maybe it's Wiggins over points, but like Wiggins is terrible from the free throw line. I think he's shooting like below 60% this postseason. Klay Thompson, maybe a mixed bag. He goes hot and cold. Jordan Poole isn't the same player on the road either. His home roads are really, really stark. So I said, you know what? Instead of trying to guess the guy that's going to go off, let's get the guy that's going to pass the ball to the guy that's going to go off. And it's Steph Curry. So the ball's going to be in Curry's hands. He's going to play a lot. So I like Curry over assists as the best way to attack what I think is going to be a Warriors game plan by committee, win or lose. I think that's the type of game we're getting from Golden State.
Nice. What about the other one in the NBA tonight?
Again, we're looking for role players at home, going to go off. I was talking about Jordan Poole's home roads are stark. Well, Jalen Brunson, he's more home road proof. He's playing a ton. He's playing over 30 minutes in each game. And the Warriors are trying to stop the Mavericks from getting downhill. And Jalen Brunson's adapted to that. He's taken at least 5 threes in every single game. He made 5 in game 2, made 3 in game 3. His 3-point prop is only at 1.5 tonight. I really like this, only minus 125. Even if you want to juice this up and go for like an alt over 3 at like plus 200, plus 250, I think that's worth a look. Again, Brunson's going to be on the floor a lot. I can't trust Maxi Kleber. I bet on Reggie Bullock earlier in the series. He might be out of gas. I think Brunson, they're going down swinging, and I think Luke is going to have to move the ball. And Brunson, they're giving him these threes. He's taking them with confidence. So I like over 1.5 threes. That's just, again, a low bar to climb for a guy that's done it with ease the past few games.
Yeah, and again, especially with Luka really having these strong first halves, but then the second half, the Mavs start to tail away a little bit. Brunson's also likely potentially playing for a big fat contract over the offseason. So he's been letting it fly with a lot of confidence as well. So I can definitely get on board with Brunson there. And I also wonder too, some of those games where the Warriors kind of take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, they've gotten torched from 3. And I bet that Brunson could be sort of the benefactor of this type of matchup in this situation.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to deviate that far from their game plan of we're going to try and outshoot from 3. I mean, I've been saying this the whole postseason. They're playing the right way. They are putting the math in their favor by taking more threes. We saw it in game 2. They built up a 19-point lead, 17 or 19. And then in game 3, though, they couldn't hit anything. Reggie Bullock went like 0 of 9 from 3. Kleber went 0 of 5. He's like afraid of his own shadow now. Davis Bertans can't hit a 3. Brunson, at least, we know he's taking it confidently.
Yes.
I do think there's maybe like a Bullock bounce back game, but his threes was over 2.5 juice, like minus 140. So I thought that this was a better route. I trust Brunson.
Do you think if Reggie Bullock has a bounce back game, we can call it the Bullock of the night?
Yeah. I should have just taken that for that great zinger.
Not
to be confused with former Maverick Kristaps Porzingis.
Yes. I try to tee him up for you.
Yeah, you more than really put him up for me.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's team players all across the board here. So let's take one last look at our best bets of the night for this evening. On the Major League Baseball side, Reed is going with the over for Rangers and the Angels. I like the under for Dylan Cease strikeouts in the White Sox-Red Sox game. Also like the under 6.5 runs in the 2 teams playing against each other in South Florida with Tampa Bay and Miami. And then on the NBA side, Reed's going with the over 5.5 Steph Curry assists and also over 1.5 Jalen Brunson threes. 3 overs for the under king in Reed Wallach. Sometimes I don't even know what we're doing here. And I also like the Dallas Wings plus 8.5, getting 8.5 for some reason on the road against the Connecticut Sun. Sometimes life just hands you just a delicious piece of pie, and you have to go ahead and just dive into it because that's the Dallas Wings tonight against Connecticut. Wow, just dynamite. It is 100 days out from the start of college football season. You're amped, you're hyped. And we have some really good games to start off the slate, and not really a surprise there. There are 3 in particular that you have circled. So I want to go through these games with you, also go over the consensus lines and get a sense of where you are initially, several months away. And also maybe we can have a conversation of where we think these lines could potentially move and the benefits of trying to jump in on some of these early as well. So let's start with two teams that really have had a fascinating offseason. You have Notre Dame going to Ohio State, get game in Columbus. The Buckeyes 14-point favorites at home. Still have the same quarterback, but he's lost a lot of weapons. We mentioned, two wide receivers in Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave going in, I believe, the top 11 back-to-back picks at 10 and 11 this year. Total in that game, 58. Notre Dame got a little bit of a sense of what life is going to be like post Brian Kelly with their new head coach. But when you actually take a look at this matchup, it does feel like it's two teams in somewhat transition, but I think you have to give the edge to Ohio State just because of how dominant they've been at the top of the Big Ten for so long, even with Michigan starting to come across last year.
Yeah, so I guess I've started in the past week, cracking open the college football numbers, getting myself reacclimated after an offseason off. Around May is when I start to do this stuff. And, first pass, this is a rough draft of sorts. Hopefully by July, I feel a little bit more confident. I start actually, brick by brick building this up. But Ohio State is number one in my initial rating. I have them as the best team in the country, better than Alabama, better than Georgia. I mean, the odds indicate that they are a tried and true national title contender. CJ Stroud's back. Smith and Jigba on the outside. He was a monster in the Rose Bowl. He had 300 yards receiving. He's as legit as they come. People think he's better than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. So got that going on. They also have a future first rounder at offensive line, future first rounder at cornerback. So Ohio State's loaded. They are a legitimate contender. Notre Dame might be primed for a bit of a step back just because they're in some transition. A little green at quarterback. Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner, they each got time last year. But again, this is their first real start. And the consensus line, it's Ohio State minus 14, total of, I believe, 58. It's in Ohio Stadium, so it's in Columbus, opening weekend. That place is going to be rocking. So I said Ohio State was number one. I see different projection systems having Notre Dame all over the place. I have them 17th. Again, this is a rough look at my numbers. I literally did that 2 days ago. So, it's, again, this is going to try, it's a rough draft, but pretty close. I'm hoping, then something went wrong if anything's way off. But I do think this is a really tough ask for Notre Dame in Marcus Freeman's first game. And while Notre Dame is better than Minnesota was last year, I do remember that Ohio State, Minnesota, first game of the year last year. Ohio State a little shaky early on, and they end up pulling away and covering, I believe, the double-digit spread. Now you're getting Ohio State with CJ Stroud with his feet under him. He had a full year. This is his system now. Maybe shuck off those nerves a little bit. I like Ohio State. I'm first gut Ohio State minus 14. I feels like they win this one going away, and they actually put up a big number. And we're going to be talking about it's that team where they make the week one statement. We're uh-oh, there's the team. There's the national title contender in Ohio State. So I like the Buckeyes to make a statement in week one.
Makes a lot of sense. And I'm a fan of Marcus Freeman. It's fun for me now to actually kind of get behind Notre Dame and root for them to be successful because I want Freeman to succeed. And I hated Brian Kelly, just very. And
we're going to talk about him next.
Right.
He's coming up.
So in that sense, what I find interesting is that you're right. You have the team that is going in with the potential Heisman Trophy favorite in CJ Stroud. That you don't even have to worry about that position. And it's Ohio State, so they're going to load up on offensive talent regardless. I just don't know if Notre Dame is going to be able to score enough. And that's with having a lot of respect for Tommy Rees, who's staying on, who wanted to remain a part of this program even when Brian Kelly left. So those two aspects, Freeman bringing in Al Golden as a new defensive coordinator to take his spot, and then you have Rees. There is more continuity than maybe most would lead you to believe, but there's also a ton of new coaches in that regard. So from the smaller individual perspective, that's going to be some changes, but the offense is still going to be the same. Defensive system is still going to be the same. I think it ultimately comes down to whether or not, if it's a two quarterback system and you're still trying to evaluate who's going to be the guy, that makes it even more difficult against Ohio State. That's going to have a big, speedy defensive front. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to score enough points. So I'm almost wondering if the under might be in play, because if Notre Dame can hold Ohio State as much as they can with their defense, maybe you're looking at a situation where the under could possibly go to work for you at under 58. But yeah, Ohio State minus 14. My guess is by the time this game gets closer, it'll probably be, minus 14 and a half or 15.
Yeah, something to keep in mind also, Ohio State, their biggest issue was limiting offenses. Their offense would score against anybody. It's, can they pull away from teams? Can they, get enough stops? And, Ohio State went out and they got Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State, who built a juggernaut of a defense, arguably the best defense in the country last year with Oklahoma State. Obviously, they nearly made the college football playoff. They were a play away in the Big 12 championship. He's now in Columbus with a bunch of talent. I mean, I just think this reeks of maybe Ohio State starts a little slow and then they pull away and they end up covering this game pretty convincingly. So my first look was to Ohio State. But again, I agree with you, all the points on Notre Dame. I think the demise has been exaggerated.
Let's move on. So we got a first matchup between Notre Dame and Ohio State under the way. Let's talk about Oregon and Georgia. Bulldogs, the defending national champions, minus 17 in that matchup against Oregon. And by the way, I mentioned, you did say that a game is at Ohio State. Oregon and Georgia, I don't believe is in Athens, right? Is that a neutral site game?
It's at the Georgia Dome, I'm pretty sure. So okay. It's like
still advantage Georgia.
Yeah, it's on a neutral, but it's a Georgia home game.
Okay.
Somewhere, it's one of the big Southern domes.
Okay. So from the standpoint of Georgia, that from the defensive side of the ball, that's some serious losses from the NFL draft this year.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it's still always been the bread and butter of Kirby Smart teams to have a dominant defense. It's always been the offense that's been a little bit hit or miss. Oregon, on the other hand, it's kind of that opposite, where they can be a little bit soft defensively, still have some really good pass rushers that we've seen over the last few years. But no Kayvon Thibodeau over in the mix as well now. How do you evaluate Oregon? Do you think the line for Georgia might be a little bit too inflated? And how much, if it is played closer to Georgia, do you think that ends up playing a role as well? Because Oregon, granted, for their perspective, did a terrific job in week 2 last year at Ohio State, pulling off the upside.
Yeah. So my initial lean is basically I have Georgia as a top 5 team still. I have Oregon closer to 25th. So that's how to set the standard, I guess, going into this season. Oregon, obviously, in a bit of more of a coaching transition than anything. Dan Lanning, who comes from Georgia, he's a first-time head coach. He brings Bo Nix with him from Auburn, of course. He has experience with Georgia. He played them 3 times, only lost by single digit, lost all 3, lost by double digits twice, single digits once. So Bo Nix is likely going to be the starter for Oregon in this game. I don't really know where to go with this one. I kind of lean under. We see, though, when the Pac-12 teams move up and face the SEC's elite, they really, really struggle. The Pac-12 kind of gets exposed as maybe a little bit of an overrated conference, even if Oregon goes in with maybe a lofty ranking, top 15 or something. I don't even know if the AP polls out. So Georgia, again, they're obviously not going to be as great as their national championship team, maybe a step behind, but this is a team that's still in the college football playoff mix. They lose weapons everywhere, though. No Pickens, no more James Cook, no more White at running back, but still Stetson Bennett, who is a game manager. Can he cover a 17-point spread? I'm inclined to more go under on this one. I think we see maybe Georgia ends up covering, but I think it's going to be a real struggle for Oregon, who's transitioning some pieces on offense. It's Bo Nix's first game. Both teams kind of towards the back end in terms of returning production, a stat that ESPN's Bill Connolly tracks. So bit of a more question marks than maybe an Ohio State team, but I still like Georgia. I lean Georgia, and I like the under a lot more, though.
How much of an advantage do you think Lanning, knowing that Georgia system, can then apply for somebody like Bo Nix in that first year? I almost feel like if I had to lean in a certain direction initially, I kind of feel like Oregon first half might
Yeah.
be an intriguing play because
like
you
that.
have the defensive coordinator coming over, understanding, familiar with that game plan. But then when Georgia makes the adjustments in the second half, that's when everything could break loose. And now you're talking about a first-time head coach who may be in over his skis a little bit at the beginning. It's not to
I
say
can
that
totally
Lanning,
see that.
yeah, it's not to say that
Especially
Lanning
like
doesn't deserve the opportunity, but it's still your first game as a college football head coach is going up against the defending national champions, and there's going to be adjustments that need to be made.
100%. And also like the scripted portion, like they're going to be practicing that whole first quarter all summer long. They're going to be ready to go. Like Georgia, while they are capable of putting up points, they're still an SEC offense, but they base it more on their defense. So all of a sudden, if this game starts slow, you're into the first, last drive of the first quarter. It's still 3-0, 0-0, and you're catching Oregon like plus 9.5 first half. Gotta be feeling pretty good as long as Knicks could avoid the, costly turnover. But yeah, I actually think I would rather Oregon first half than Georgia game. Or maybe that's how I would even play it. Like play Oregon first half, come back on Georgia second half. But I just think the under is the look here. I just think Oregon, they might be a little outmatched for a Georgia defense that may not be the all-time good, but it's still a Georgia defense. This is still an elite unit. So I think that you could see Oregon struggle to break like 14, 17 points.
All right, last one that we have on the docket is Florida State and LSU. Much closer spread than the first two games that we've mentioned. LSU, a 2-point favorite in that game. Total of 51.5. And for anybody that's used to betting on LSU games, you haven't seen a low total for them in a few years under Ed Orgeron. But now Brian Kelly is there, and the defensive mindset and a lot of ground and pound has moved over to Baton Rouge, along with Brian Kelly's awful Cajun accent. Florida State, though, is returning a lot of guys. And if you buy into the fact of, give them a few years to try to get something going, maybe, just maybe, Mike Norvell's team in his third year could start to figure some things out. I almost wonder, considering that the line, I'm surprised that the line is where it is. And I think it's an indication that Vegas might have a little bit more confidence in Florida State than maybe the public does at this point.
Yeah, I'm with the odds makers in this one. I like Florida State. Maybe listen, these are two teams that, especially, Florida State a lot longer, but LSU also in recent history, like two teams that have just burned bettors going into the season. LSU last year, I know it was at Orgeron's last year and all that, but like they went to UCLA and they lost. They were favorites on the road. Now they're home for a Florida State team that comes in. Like this is supposed to be the year for Mike Norvell. They bring back 85% of their production, which, top 10 in the country. Jordan Travis, he's going to have a full off season here, dual threat quarterback. They also went out and got receivers in the transfer portal. This offense is going to be a lot more dynamic. We were just talking about Oregon. Michael Pittman, Oregon's number one receiver. He's now with the Seminoles. I lean Florida State here. I know the crowd might be a factor. It's week one. LSU is going to be excited. Brian Kelly's first game. But again, as good as Brian Kelly is, it's his first game. Rome wasn't built in a day. This is an LSU team that is kind of having to build back up after falling apart after that national championship run. So listen, maybe I'll let Florida State burn me in week one and then I'll, temper my expectations. But like, I think that this has, at least on paper going into the season, this team has a top 10 outlook. Like going preseason rating,
Really?
This team could be at least near the top 10. Like I ran my first numbers and like, again, it's a rough draft, but I had Florida State inside my top 10 and I had LSU closer to like 20. And I think LSU could go further down. I think that there's a lower floor for LSU. Yet there might be for Florida State also, but LSU, they could end up being another 500 team. I think that there's a lot of question marks around LSU. Florida State, the talent's there. Can this team put it all together, though, with a lot more talent on offense? We'll see what happens. But Florida State, there's definitely a lot of expectation here. And listen, they're only 2-point underdogs on the road. LSU as one of the top home field advantages. So that's saying something in itself that odds makers think that Florida State is clearly the better team here. They're just on the road. You know what I'm saying? So, I think Florida State, there is reasonable expectation going into the year that this team is going to be good to go and maybe make a run at the ACC after, a lot of years of coming up short. So I lean Florida State. I got to think about this a little bit more because it is Florida State. They do like to burn bettors, but I don't know, like at least like what we've seen, Florida State, at least we kind of know what's there. LSU,
Right.
we really have no idea what Brian Kelly's going to bring to the table.
You kind of know what to expect, but again,
It's his
like
first year there. Like I'm
first
saying, this
year, yeah,
iteration.
and he's moved. You can look at some of his time in Cincinnati and Notre Dame to see how he's done in year one before eventually shaping the program to what he wants it to be. Like, I also think LSU is banking on the fact that they had plenty of talent, but they just kind of coasted under Orgeron in that final year, nowhere near the level of expectations from when they won the national championship. And obviously, there's a lot of transition there as well. Again, the odds makers are telling us that Florida State is a quality team if they're setting the line at this number against LSU with the type of reputation of Brian Kelly coming in. So to me, it's a question of whether or not you buy in on Mike Norvell to make that adjustment in year 3. This is when you start to see it many times in college football. When a guy finally has a program, finally starts to get the influx of recruits and players that they need to be successful, get the other guys' players out, move their players in. I think it says something certainly to what Florida State can be, and the fact that you potentially could have them looking into the top 10 after a lot of down seasons. Certainly think that's a level of intrigue for anybody that is backing Florida State this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, we see this team come up short all the time. So maybe I'm a little too bullish going into the year, and I'm going to obviously keep preparing. It's only May 24th. We don't have to make a bet right now, but like my initial feel is like Florida State's the better team, and we don't really know what we're getting from LSU. I kind of like, to me, I think there's more upside on the FSU side than there is on the LSU side. So I'm kind of inclined to think Florida State could go into Death Valley and get a win, but we'll see where this line goes because it's only 2. We'll see. There's no rush here, especially when we're kind of in that dead zone of 2. We'll see what happens there.
Can you imagine that press conference afterwards, losing to Florida State at home? Brian Kelly walks up to the microphone and goes, well, I'll say.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I could see that. I could see that.
Be great. I actually really hope that he just fully leans into the terrible fake accent.
And I want to see more what the outlook of LSU is like. Again, it's like when summer camp comes in, like, preseason and how they're really looking and sounding going into the year, I feel like we're going to see FSU, at least going into the year, they're going to have some confidence with Jordan Travis, finally the guy under center. I think that we're really going to see FSU come in with a little bit of confidence. And again, they have 85% return in production. They nearly beat Notre Dame last year. They hung tough with Clemson. I know they ended up losing by 10, but they hung tough in that game. They beat Miami, who was a quality opponent, a bowl team. There's, I think, at least cause for optimism in Tallahassee this year.
All right. So those are the 3 games again for anybody that's just joining us. Reed and I went through the 3 most notable games on the week 1 schedule. We are 100 days away from the start of college football. Notre Dame and Ohio State, the Buckeyes 14-point favorites at home with a total of 58. You have Oregon and Georgia. Good opportunity for that matchup with Oregon's new head coach coming directly from Georgia in that program. Bulldogs are 17-point favorites in that game with a total of 51. And then Florida State and LSU, the Tigers, 2-point favorites with a total of 51.5. Perfect opportunity on transition for the game of the night, Reed.
Something that's happening tonight, not in 3 months.
Yes. I mean, I like the fact that we can do everything. We got the bird's eye view from college football season, and then dive right into game 4, where it might be several months before we see the Dallas Mavericks play a game again. I hope that's not the case. And by the way, if you're interested, we made this our game of the night over on the Daily Betslip. If you're interested in weighing in on our poll, you can do that in a couple different places. You can go to Twitter at BetSided. I'll go ahead and bring that right to the top of our page. Twitter.com/BetSided is where you can vote on this being the game of the night. Are you going with Dallas -1, Golden State +1, or the over or under on 215.5? You can also vote right here on YouTube. If you're watching us there, go ahead and vote on the poll there. We'll get you our results from you coming up in just a few minutes, and that's going to be ultimately our pick of the night. But as far as this game is concerned, Ray, like the biggest thing for me is Golden State completely outclassed them the first couple games. But more significantly, the second half performances of the Warriors have Dallas has done nothing to stop it. In game 3, what was so crazy to me, and someone who's watched Andrew Wiggins since that year in Kansas, where we've been waiting since 2014 for him to take that next step. And obviously a quality player, you play in the All-Star game this year, but his assertiveness as a rebounder has been mind-boggling. Like his ability beating those guys off the dribble to get to the basket, and then also being in perfect position to play a little bit closer in, use his athleticism to his advantage. Like all the things that we thought Wiggins could be, we're starting to see it. And if he has that type of performance again, and we've actually seen a little bit of line movement over at WinBet. The game is now Mavericks -1.5, -125 on the money line. Golden State now +1.5. Before we dive into this, like you would agree that if Dallas can't get stops in the second half, even if they got off to a big lead, and Doncic has been a great first half player this year and has saved the Mavericks many times in the second half. If they can't slow down Golden State in the second half, it's going to be over before it starts.
Yeah. Looks like I'm wrong on this one with Dallas. I think the handicap was there. I mean, game 2, obviously brutal. And then game 1, I had a feeling game 1 they were going to lose. Game 2, I thought they could get. Game 3, they just couldn't hit a shot. There's your series, right? Like, kind of. I'm like, how about this? Are you like impressed with the Warriors?
I don't know if I'm impressed with the Warriors because I always felt like this was their level of capability that we
like. Do you think they look like a dominant team though, or do you think that they look like they're just better than what's probably?
I think they know that they're better, and they're toying with Dallas right now because Dallas is missing outside shots. They're getting beat off the dribble. What's supposed to be a very solid defensive team has not shown it in the second half. I think the level of talent on Golden State is worthy of a worthy NBA Finals champion. But there's been too many times this year where Golden State has just not been the dominant team that they should be. Like the series against Memphis is a perfect example. You lose John Morant, stomp on their throat. Like you have guys that are dealing with injuries. Go take care of business. And then Morant goes out and you get 50 balled.
Mm-hmm. And
that's not a reflection of a team that like is. I can't buy that as a pure dominant team, but I don't know if I've seen enough from Dallas to indicate that they're going to be able to come back in this series.
No, I don't think they're going to come back, but I guess I could just give out like my best bet. I'm just going to go down with the ship. I'm going to go Mavs -1.
So you are on the right side. It's Dallas -1.5.
Okay, so yeah, Dallas -1.5, -1, sure. We've seen the Warriors twice this postseason. You just mentioned it against Memphis. They had a chance to go to Memphis, close out the series, and get home and get some rest. They lost by, well, it was essentially 50 because they benched everyone and then cut it to like 35 or whatever. So they did that. They had game 4 in Denver, and they lost that one too. So we've seen 2 closeout opportunities for Golden State where they kind of just like messed around and they lost, one way or another. I know the Denver game was close and all, but I don't know. This Dallas team doesn't strike me as one to roll over. Like, listen, again, they can miss their threes and they could just lose, and it is what it is. But like, they closed because like everyone knows about like that down 0-2 trend. Like they were like -3 in game 3, something like that, -3.5, something like that. So seems like the market like adjusted or over adjusted because everyone knew that Dallas was the quote unquote side. So now you're getting Dallas at what I think is like, I guess like the correct number, maybe Warriors -1, sure. But like, I don't think the difference between the two teams is as great as a 3-0 deficit. Like, I think if Dallas hits a few shots in the second half of game 2, all of a sudden we're looking at like a big time matchup in Dallas where it's 2-1 and Dallas is playing for their season. So yes, I get they're going to get swept, but this Dallas team looks a little, at least I feel they're a little prideful. They have a superstar in Luka Doncic. This doesn't feel like a team that's going to roll over and die. Or if they do, at least they're going to go down shooting a bunch of threes, and hopefully Jalen Brunson hits 2 of them. So at least I hit that prop. But I'm gonna go down. Listen, Dallas, I bet them before the series. I'm not saying they're going to come back. I'm not saying anything like that. I do think though we could catch the Warriors in a flat spot. We've seen them do it twice before, so I'll ride with Dallas.
I'm with you. If I had to pick a side or a total, I prefer Dallas at -1. I suppose even -1.5.
Okay, so ready? Like I could totally see this happening. Dallas shoots like they did in game 2, the first half. They go up big, and then Golden State, there's no comeback. They just pick it up and go home. They just like whatever. Like they're over it. I think if Dallas is hitting their threes early, I actually think like there's like some blowout potential here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think there's blowout potential both ways. I think the margin of victory, I do not think it's a close game tonight. I think it's a double-digit winner either way.
Okay. So I wrote up at BetSided a little bit earlier today that if you're going to bet the Warriors, bet them in the second half tonight.
Yes, I agree.
You talked about margin of victory. I saw this from Joe Osborne over was at Oddshark. I know he's now elsewhere. In the second half, the Warriors are outscoring Dallas by just under 16 points.
Okay, I think though, if Dallas goes up big early, I don't know if we see a fight from Golden State. Like I don't think we see like a game 2 comeback.
Yeah, okay. If it's a blowout, I agree with you. I still think the Warriors at that point can still be potentially in play for a second half bet. It's really dependent on just how big the upset is. If we're talking about like a 6 to 12 point lead for Dallas, it has to be a full on blowout. Like Golden State can't make anything for me to feel.
Yeah. Dallas needs to be up like 15 and a half, and I'll be like, okay, I think Dallas like second half isn't like they could like blow it open and like Golden State won't care. But if it's close, I actually think Golden State could win by like 12 to 15.
Right.
Like I think the winner of the game wins by double digits.
Right. Golden State is actually and Golden State's been a great second half team all year. They were 8th in the NBA in second half points. Dallas was I think bottom 6 in second half points this season. It's just never been something that they've been good at. Let me quickly give you my play on the night for today. I like a prop in this battle. And I'm going back. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, and that's Andrew Wiggins. It's a high juice number, but you're also getting it at a full rebound less at WinBet at 5.5 than you're getting at most other sports books. WinBet set it at 5.5 for his over under on rebounds. Most books have it at 6.5, but it's minus 145. I cannot figure out for a team that's fundamentally sound defensively as Dallas, why they continue to give him opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And yes, Wiggins has hit the under on that number in the first 2 games, but he finished at 5 and then had the 11 rebound game. I don't think the 11 actually was the outlier. I think the 11 is actually closer to where he probably should be because he's averaging just under 12 rebounding opportunities per game. Like he's around the basket more often than he has been in the past. I saw that Sal Vetri DFS, who does some really outstanding work when it comes to prop bets. He mentions that Wiggins has seen just under 12 rebound chances per game. His average rebound distance is just under 6 feet. He's playing closer to the basket. And he's averaging 7 rebounds per game in the series. So he's been around that number consistently. He constantly beats them off the dribble, like I mentioned before. He's playing a ton of minutes. And so they just don't have an answer for him right now. And the fact that he's also getting a lot of second chance opportunities feels like the number should actually be closer to 6.5 or 7. The fact that it's 5.5 feels like it's well on the way. I think Wiggins has another really solid night, somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 9 rebounds. And again, I do think it'll be close. I would expect the Mavs to win a close game. But it has to be dependent on what happens with Wiggins. And he's just been so good and so dominant in that category that I don't think they have an answer for him right now. I love Andrew Wiggins over 5.5 tonight.
Yeah, I think the Mavs, like why they're losing the series is on the glass. And Looney and Wiggins are just eating. Like I think that's the difference.
Unfortunately, our betting community, our BetSided friends do not agree with us on the Mavs.
I wouldn't agree with me either on this one. I'm like dead wrong.
You're hanging on for dear life. Turns out that
I thought the Mavs were gonna. I took a bath in that game. I really thought the Mavs were gonna win Game 3, but
I thought they were too.
I thought at least they were getting Game 3, and they'd probably lose this game. But
the entire game changed when Golden State went on that 10-0 run.
Going to half.
Right before the half.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. And any sort of good feelings that they had going in was just gone very, very quickly. But we do have a winner, and it was actually fairly close. Just under 39% decided to go with Warriors at +1. 30.6% went with Mavs -1. And then a little bit sprinkle. Joanne, I don't know if you know the answer, Joanne, our producer director. Have we bet a total yet on game of the night? No, not one total has come through, and we've been doing the show now for I think we're in our third week of doing Daily Betslip. So at some point we need a total to come through. Maybe we just need to make more.
Take an under. Come on, public, take an under.
Yeah, public unders. That'll probably. If we get a public under, like that might just have to be our walk-off show.
Yeah.
That might be our drop the mic moment and just be like, all right, it's over. And that is it. That is the show for today. So the community is going with the Warriors +1. We'll go ahead and enter that bet in just a little bit as well. Thank all of you guys for hanging out with us. Read great stuff as well. Read Reed's work over at BetSided today. Awesome French Open coverage today, by the way, too. Really fully diving in to Roland Garros coverage. So make sure you check that out as well. Great work today also from Peter Dewey and Donovan Smoot and Matt Tessero, Joe Summers, the rest of the crew. We will have a brand new Daily Bet Slip on the show tomorrow. You'll be back with our guy Peter Dewey breaking down Game 5 between the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. So for Reed, I'm Ben. Thanks again to Joanne. Thanks to all of you guys for watching us today. We'll see you tomorrow on a brand spanking new edition of the Daily Bet Slip at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk to you then. So long, everybody.